Yucatan Peninsula in 1517, but it was only after 1540 that the Spanish began more direct efforts to convert the Maya to Christianity through missionary activities. The Franciscan, Dominican, and Jesuit orders played key roles in the establishing churches, schools, and monasteries to teach the indigenous people about Catholicism. Forced conversion and syncretism. The Spanish crown of the Catholic Church saw the conversion to Christianity as means of ensuring control over the indigenous populations. The Maya, like many other indigenous groups, were initially resistant to the new religion as it conflicted with their deep-rooted spiritual beliefs, practices, and cosmology. The Maya had their own gods, rituals, and sacred calendar, and many continued to practice their religion covertly. However, over time, the Catholicism became infused with elements of indigenous Mayan beliefs. This blending of religious traditions is known as syncretism. The Maya adopted Catholic saints and other Christian symbols, but incorporated them into their existing cultural framework. For instance, some Mayan gods were equated with Catholic saints, and Catholic rituals and prayers were adapted to fit into traditional Mayan ceremonies. This allowed the Mayan to retain aspects of their identity while conforming outwardly to the demands of the Spanish. The role of the Church and Spanish colonial authorities. During this colonial period, the Catholic Church became the central institution in the daily life of the Maya. Churches and missionaries served as both religious and political forces, helping to consolidate Spanish rule over the indigenous population. Mayan villagers were often required to build churches and attend mass. However, this process was never uniform. While some Maya communities fully embraced Catholicism, others resisted or maintained their traditional beliefs in secret. Spanish colonial authorities also implemented the encomienda system, where Spanish settlers were granted the right to extract labor from the indigenous population, often using religious instruction as a tool for control. Persistence of the Mayan culture and religion. Despite the efforts of the Spanish to completely Christianize the Maya, many aspects of tradition, Mayan religion, language, and customs survived. Some remote areas, especially the highlands of the Guatemala and the southern Mexico, Mayan traditions continued alongside Catholic practices. The religious syncretism became particularly evident in festivals where Catholic saints were honored in ways that blended indigenous rituals with Christian ones. For example, the Catholic feasts days for saints like Saint James Santiago, who was seen as a protector of the indigenous people, often overlapped with indigenous ceremonies honoring ancient gods and spirits. The Mayan people today, the descendants of the ancient Maya, are still present in southern Mexico, Guatemala, and parts of Central America. They often continue to practice a form of religious syncretism, combining elements of the Catholicism with traditional Mayan beliefs. In indigenous Mayan languages like Quiche, Yucatec, and Quechua are still spoken, and traditional Mayan customs and practices are still part of daily life in many religions. In many ways, Christianity in the region is not just foreign religion imposed by the Spanish, but has become part of the cultural fabric of Mayan identity. The region has a rich tradition of indigenous Christianity where Catholic saints are worshipped alongside indigenous spirit. While Mayan civilization was located primarily in southern part of what is now Mexico, particularly in the Yucatan Peninsula and surrounding areas, Christianity spread into these regions during and after Spanish quest, affecting the culture of the religious. If you want to know how the Mayan cultural legacy, how it's performing in this modern era, all you have to do is subscribe, check this channel out, and check out the video on how the Mayan descendants are working out in this modern era. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you click the subscribe button, like this video, share your thoughts down in the comments. The Mayan culture is far from extinct. In fact, there has been an resurgence of interest in preserving and reviving Mayan heritage today. Indigenous Mayan groups continue to speak their traditional languages such as Yucatec, Kik, and Quechua, and Mam, with millions of speakers still using these languages in daily life in countries like Guatemala, Mexico, and Honduras. There are efforts to protect and promote Mayan languages through education, media, and cultural programs. Mayan festivals and rituals are also still widely celebrated, albeit often in syncretic form with Catholicism. The fusion of Catholic saints and traditional Mayan deities remains a central feature of local religious life. For instance, Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos celebrations in southern Mexico combine Catholic and Mayan elements, and the feast of the Mayan saint like Saint James Santiago is celebrated in a distinctly Mayan style. In art and architecture, there is growing interest in ancient Mayan structures, textiles, and pottery. Many modern artists from Mayan communities are reviving traditional art forms while incorporating contemporary themes, making Mayan culture a vibrant force in the world of indigenous arts. While Mayan communities continue to preserve and celebrate their traditions, they face significant challenges. The Mayan population in the modern era often grapples with issues such as poverty, marginalization, and the lack of political representation. Many Mayan communities still live in rural areas where access to quality healthcare, education, and infrastructure is limited. The indigenous rights movement has grown significantly in recent decades. Groups like Zapatistas in Mexico, who are rooted in Chiapas, have highlighted the plight of indigenous communities, calling for better treatment and greater autonomy. The Zapatista movement, which began in the 1990s, directly challenges economic and political structures that have historically marginalized indigenous populations, including the Maya. In Guatemala, the Mayan people suffered significantly during the Guatemalan Civil War 1960 and 1996, where military repression led to mass violence, including the genocide of indigenous communities by the government. Since the peace accords of the 1990s, there have been efforts to bring justice to these communities, but the legacy of the violence continues to affect Mayan families and their sense of identity. The Mayan region, particularly in the southern Mexico and Guatemala, remain economically disadvantaged. Many Maya still depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, but the effects of global economic changes, land dispossession, and environmental degradation have made this way of life increasingly difficult. In Mexico, indigenous groups include the Maya often face economic disparities, while regions such as Yucatan Peninsula have seen the economic growth due to tourism. This has not always translated into improved living standards for the Maya. Moreover, the economic boom has led to environmental issues such as deforestation, water shortages, and land conflict problems that disproportionately affect indigenous people who depend on land for agriculture and survival. Tourism, especially around the archaeological sites like Chichen Itza, Tulum, and Palenque, has brought some economic benefits but also challenges. Many Maya working in tourism-related industries face exploitation and low wages, and there are concerns about the commercialization of their culture. In Guatemala, coffee and cardamom cultivation, as well as other forms of agriculture, still play a major role in the economy. However, the Maya face obstacles such as land disputes and limited access to capital, which further entrenches poverty. Education remains a crucial area for the modern Mayan population. In many rural areas, access to quality education is still limited, and language barriers make it harder for the Mayan children to succeed in traditional schooling, which is often taught in Spanish and other dominant language. However, there has been significant strides towards bilingual education, with schools in Mexico and Guatemala offering instructions in both Mayan languages and Spanish.